In the 2018 midterms, almost 3 million Americans overseas were eligible to cast a vote, but only 4.5% actually did. Really low numbers, really not acceptable. And since then, the numbers have gone up a bit, but it's still not good. So I wanted to help walk you through how to cast your vote with this tool that I've found. I have also been casting my vote abroad now for a few elections, and unfortunately, my last vote was not counted because I did not do it correctly. So it's really important that you find a resource that helps walk you through each step. I found this resource. So I'm going to have my producer put the instructions up on the screen. Go ahead and pause it, take a screenshot, and if you're listening, we'll have this dropped in the show notes. Welcome back to the Dose of Dutch podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Terry, and today we are going to have an episode on one of my favorite things to talk about, politics, specifically American politics. And because it's the lead up to the midterm elections in the US, I wanted to bring on someone who I consider an expert on this topic, Taylor Patterson. She founded a nonprofit in the US working on voter rights and democracy, and now she's working as a political consultant for American and European political parties in The Hague. So she is all around an expert on all things voting, elections, and democracy. And we have a conversation just about political engagement, what it's like to be an American abroad, how to still stay engaged, and also importantly, how much your vote matters, even in a midterm election. If you are an American living abroad, I also want to really encourage you to vote. I know it seems like the elections are in November, it's really far away, but as someone living abroad, it can take a little bit longer and the process can be a bit confusing. So it's really important to get that admin in order now. At the end of the episode, I'll do a segment with this tool I've found that can help you cast and make sure your vote is counted. So now let's bring on Taylor. Welcome to the show, Taylor. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, you love to talk.
I do love to talk.
We have good chats.
Yes. There's probably, going to be 5 hours of this on the cutting room floor. Just
ready to chat about midterms voting. Do you want to give a little bit of your background, explain to everyone kind of maybe a bit about why I asked you on?
Yeah, sure. So I moved to The Hague about a year ago, but before that, I'm from Las Vegas. I ran a 501c4, which is a nonprofit for our non-Americans. It's a nonprofit, but with like a little bit of a political mix to it. So you can do a little bit of, go vote and that kind of stuff. But it was specifically around the Native American voting rights and sort of all things voting, if you will, democracy, all of those fun things. So I was the executive director of that organization that I founded for 5 years. And then, like I said, we moved here. Now, my husband and I are partners at Into the Blue Consulting, which does all sorts of other political stuff, campaigns, fundraising, anything surrounding voting candidates, we kind of do. So.
Yeah, democracy.
Democracy, yes.
In the US, abroad. Yeah.
Anywhere, yes.
Yeah.
we love to get people to vote.
Yes. And also a bit of background on like how you got into that position. So what kind of led you?
Yeah. I never really thought of myself as all that political. And I think my husband and I met in high school and he was very much immediately like, I want to go into politics. I probably want to run for office. Like very much like, oh yeah, no, like this is my thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. I don't do that, but like good for you. But when I was in college, I ended up getting sick with a chronic illness and it very much, I think, radicalized. I know that's kind of like a negative word, but like radicalized my husband and I both because I was having to deal with the American healthcare system, which was complicated and expensive. And I was very lucky. Both my parents were in unions, so we had very good union healthcare and that was helpful. But even then, it was incredibly difficult to navigate. And then in kind of like exploring the political process, I saw how my people, tribal people, were completely left out of that process. I'm a member of the Bishop Paiute tribe, which is out of California. And no natives were participating in any sort of like political infrastructure. There was like some native spaces in just the straight nonprofit structure where it was like direct services to the people of like, here, like we'll give you diapers or food or whatever. But natives have been left completely out of like that sort of voting infrastructure. And that led me to really starting to think about how can we inject ourselves into this process and, you know, try to make a difference. It's hard. The American political process is really giant and very full of money. So when you're doing something truly people powered, it can be really difficult.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I think I was actually more the type like your husband. So
Yeah.
I did like youth in government all through middle school, high school, which is like kind of mock government programs. So
Yeah.
we did Model UN, of course. I
Oh,
ran
nice.
the Model UN circuit in Kentucky.
Yeah.
But we also did like mock state government, which I loved. And
Mhm.
I thought like, okay, I want to maybe run for office one day. Or actually what I always wanted was to be like the number two, like the
Yeah.
campaign director. Like I thought that that's the person in the movies, at least. That's the one who's always kind of pulling the strings and like making the decisions. I didn't want to be in the limelight. Funny enough. I was like, I don't want to be on stage. Like I want to be like making the strategies and doing
Yeah.
kind of the direct work. But I was always very interested in politics and working on different campaigns. So it was kind of sad when I moved here, actually, because I started to feel very disconnected from the American political system. I don't know if you felt that as well, or
Yeah, and I think moving here too, you kind of feel stuck in between, right? Because you're not quite a part of the American process anymore, but you're also not quite a part of the Dutch process either. I still can't vote here.
neither.
And so I want to know more and I want to be exposed to the different political parties here because that to me is like the best part about the Dutch system. And I know so many Dutch people tell me they're like, oh no, we have too many political parties. But coming from a very strict two-party system, I'm so fascinated by everyone. It's a very high barrier to entry here, I notice. And I do love that they put so much effort into what they call their manifestos. But I would just love like a really nice little, you know, communication of just like, give me your 7 bullet points. Like, what are you trying to do here? And like, give me something a little bit more palatable, particularly because I am not fluent in Dutch. So like reading that and translating that and trying to figure it all out, I feel like was really difficult. And so when looking back at American politics, I'm like, oh, it was so easy. Like we knew, obviously I spoke English. Everybody else spoke English. There was so many like people trying to get you involved. And I feel like here it's a little bit more, you got to kind of seek it out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you see the kind of big billboards go up for, did you notice this part?
I did. It's funny to me because like when we talk about GOTV, quote unquote, which is get out the vote, that's like a month-long process in the US. Like you're doing strict like get out the vote efforts for like the last 2 weeks, right? Where you're really trying to turn people out, but it's a long process. And here they like throw up the billboards and they're like, see you guys, like come vote, you know? It's like, what are we doing? I saw for the first election we were here, I saw Party for the Deer, they were actually out doing what you would call hot spotting, and like handing out flyers and stuff. And I was like, those were the only people I saw that were like actively out and about. And I was so surprised. I'm like, where is everybody?
No, I also saw the same because in the US, we do a lot of door knocking, which I remember walking like kilometers. Sorry, I gotta remember where I am.
But like extra kilometers.
Like a lot of kilometers. Like going door to door because I lived in like a suburb of a city. So it was like the houses are really far apart. And I was imagining like door knocking here must be a breeze. Like you can hit so many doors. But I've never had someone, I don't know if it's even legal to come knock on a door.
You can, and different parties like do it in different places, you know, it just depends. I think what is so different here and in like, I guess tailoring like our American clients versus like our European clients is data. Data is so different. I cringe to think because it's like so bad for the world, but like the stuff we can find on American voters is amazing. And like all of this like modeled scoring where you can tell like, is somebody more likely to be a union supporter? Is somebody more likely to, you know, have a dog? All of those kind of things. You can do all of that in America, but here with data privacy laws, it's so much more difficult to find and target people. So like when you're doing a door knocking campaign here, you're really doing like, you're going to go door to door in this neighborhood and do every single door.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were privy to this when you were when you were working on your campaign, but like all of those door knockings are targeted. You're looking at like, these are our 50 Democrats in this neighborhood, and we want you to hit every door. Or if you wanted to knock for a Republican, God forbid, these are our 50 Republicans that are like more likely to vote for us. So like knock on those doors. It's all very targeted in America, whereas here you have to be like a little more like, we're knocking some housing court here. Like
That's true. I never thought about it that way. Also, just with, I mean, there were only 50 Democrats across like a very large span of Kentucky land. We're driving, actually. It's not walking campaign. So it's it's interesting. I mean, I did see people out canvassing right before the election, though. The election was maybe that week, and then it was the weekend before. And of course, I love talking to these people because I was one of them. And then after like 10 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, but I can't vote. And they're like, lady, you just wasted our time.
Yeah.
I'm like, but maybe when I can vote, I will vote for you.
Tell me more.
Yeah. But I always tell people, like, be nice. I mean, the amount of people that are so rude to the people who are volunteering their time to work for a political party, it breaks my heart. Like, I was like a 16-year-old and I was having like 50-year-olds be like, this doesn't matter at all. And I was like, okay, I'm spending my...
Should I leave you the list? No.
So can I put you down for a maybe? I mean, I don't know, especially when it's young people who are excited to be involved in the political process, and then you're getting berated by like people who are so negative. It just felt like discouraging, but also in my head as a 16-year-old, I was like, I'm never going to be that person. So I'm halfway there, and maybe hopefully I won't, but
and I think too, there's so much back and forth about the soliciting signs, right? Of like, you're not allowed to be here, and it's like, actually, this isn't technically soliciting, so I can be here to talk to you. But it's funny, my husband and I talk about, and like other, campaign people, like sometimes the people with no soliciting signs are the nicest to talk to because they like, nobody ever knocks on their door, so they're like, oh hey, like what are you doing, what are you up to? And a lot of the candidates that my husband's worked for are like really progressive people where they're knocking on doors of people that never get talked to. And that was one of the things I loved about working for the Native community is like, you're talking to people that have never been targeted before, right? Nobody's like, oh my God, we got to get those 50 Native voters out, you know? And it's like, to me, I don't care if there's 50 or 5 people. I want them to go out and vote, and I want them to know what their options are. And so I've been struck, of course, by like how awful people are, but I've also been struck by how cool people are, and how like, the old timey thing of like, don't talk, religion, politics, or money. It doesn't really hold anymore. People want to talk about politics, especially right now where, everybody's going through a cost of living crisis, whether it's here in the Netherlands, in the UK, in America. Things are expensive. Greedflation is hitting everybody. And people want to talk about that, and they want to know like, what is our option? Like, what can we do to kind of combat that?
Yeah. And also who's going to make my life better?
Yeah. And I think in America, we're seeing kind of people are sick of the same old politics, right? People want something new. We see these like really progressive primaries happening recently where people are showing they want new voices. They want to hear more about what can actually be done. It's not, I'm better than the other guy, and the other guy sucks really bad. It's like, what are you gonna
tell
do?
me what you are going to do to make my life better? Yeah.
So I've been encouraged by a lot of these really cool primaries that have been happening in the last couple months.
Yeah, I also have, and also seeing a few of the people who have won recently stick with it and not turn into kind of the establishment. I think a lot of times you see a progressive candidate, and then you're like 6 months later, let me check in on what they're doing since they won. And then they've been doing nothing. And I mean, that's also really frustrating and can feel discouraging as a voter to be like, oh, I really cared about this person. I thought that they really were going to do something different. And then they've kind of fallen into the establishment. So it's been encouraging to see them actually stick to what they said they were going to do. I mean, Mandami is the obvious, like,
yes, our guy
going out fixing potholes in New York. Like, it's actually just like, actually doing what you say you're going to do is actually very good for politics, turns out. Like,
and I think sticking to, because I think they tried to get Mamdani on all of these other things, right?
Yeah.
But it was just like, I just want to make life better for New Yorkers, and sometimes that's potholes. Sometimes there was that really cute little story about the guy wanting a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And they Instagrammed back to him. They're like, here's all of the places where you could have your meet cute. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's that. But it was like, no, don't get bogged down by all of these other issues. Like, what is your level of government going to do for the people? Because
Yeah.
I do think we see a lot of, and I've seen a lot of candidates in my short time, but I've seen a lot of different candidates who don't really tailor what they're doing to their level of the ballot either. They want to talk about this and that. And it's like, no, what is your level, whether that's the Senate or like a little mayor race, going to do?
Yeah.
So,
No, it's nice. And talking about kind of getting into the midterms, where you kind of said you're excited about progressive candidates, but I think it's also important to talk about how important midterms are, because a lot of people don't vote or don't realize that there's a big election coming up in their area. And so do you want to give also a little bit of an explanation of what are midterms for maybe our non-American voters or non-Americans that are listening?
It's like, to be clear, non-Americans can't vote.
The GOP comes after a headline like
Dutch girl wants voter fraud.
Yeah. Voter fraud from The Hague.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're already trying to get The Hague on other stuff. They're like, this is our in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so midterms is just like a cutesy term for the off-year election. So every 4 years we have the presidential, and that's of course like your biggest voting year. Not everybody, but a huge chunk of people come out to vote for the president. And then of course that influences what we call down ballot, all of the other races, the Senate, the House of Representatives, all the way down to like your little local races that are that year. Midterms is every 2 years. So in between the presidential years, every 2 years, we have the midterm elections. And there's a lot of important races that happen during those midterms. And I don't think non-Americans obviously don't know, but I don't think a lot of Americans realize that the Senate is a 6-year term.
Which means that if you run 1 year in a presidential, the next time you won't be running in a presidential. So Senate candidates.
It goes back and forth, and usually they flip-flop.
So like every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election.
Yeah, and that's a long time that they get to sit in office with essentially no recourse for any of the choices that they're making, right? So like you can have somebody, to your point, that you're really excited about, and you vote them in and they start making terrible choices. You don't get another opportunity to elect somebody new or hold them accountable for 5 more years essentially. So these are really important races, and for our non-Americans as well, we have 100 senators. So two in every state, and that's a statewide election. And so those people are representing their whole state for 6 years, and a lot of these races are getting ignored because they're not in a fun, sexy presidential year. And we have so many really good candidates this year. Like we talked about, the primary cycle has been really exciting, and we see a lot of new faces and new voices. And so among some of those like really important responsibilities of the Senate, of course, they're doing like normal legislation like they do in the House, but those are also the same people that are gonna confirm any of the president's nominees. My favorite position that nobody cares about, the National Labor Relations Board, which is a deep cut, but those are the people that really like, they make sure that all the labor laws are being followed, that new labor laws are happening. Those people, the EPA, some of these departments have been left without a cabinet or a secretary, so to speak, for the entire Trump administration so far. And so, or we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., our lovely Health and Human Services Secretary, who, is confirmed by the Senate, and all of those people have to pass through the Senate. And, they make a lot of important decisions there and are supposed to serve as a check on the president and also on the House. America's political system is supposed to be balanced between, all of the branches of government, our executive branch, the president, the judicial branch of the Supreme Court, and then, of course, the legislative branch in the Senate and the House. Has it been working that way? 50-50.
Yeah. That's a toss-up, but
yeah, but those are really important races. And also in these midterms is all of our House of Representatives members, they're up. They have a 2-year term every time, so they're always up.
They're always campaigning.
Yes, and they really are.
Yeah.
So, but all of those things are going to lead to funding for schools, funding for healthcare, all of these really cool policies that some of these progressive voices want to do are going to move through our legislative branch. And so we really need some new faces in there. But not only that, like we need to make sure that we're electing people that are representing our interests, because regardless of living abroad, we are US taxpayers. That's also our home.
Yep.
And I think as a Native person, I think differently, I guess, about like my ancestral homelands and like how I want to see the land caretaken and all of the different pieces of that, right? But like as I guess Americans, we can also share in that. I feel really sad about the state of America right now. There's a lot of excitement and cool things happening, but I hate that it is this way. But that doesn't mean we can just like,
ignore it
and abandon it, and which sounds rich, obviously coming from somebody that like moved to the Netherlands and like we can't just abandon America, everybody. Bye. But truly, like there are still ways to participate and to help that system, right?
Yeah. I mean, I actually have gotten a lot of pushback from people who are weirded out or questioning the fact that we can vote from abroad.
No. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I hadn't really thought of it until I was like, yeah, of course I can vote from abroad. Like that's a fundamental right of me as an American. And until I give up my passport, I am able to vote from abroad. Also, I pay taxes from abroad, which the United States is one of the only countries that does. But anyway, I digress. But I do think that it's still important to vote from abroad. I mean, there are some things that happen that draw you back to the US, whether you want it to or not. Maybe you need to go back for a family matter or something that's happening, and you would like to be able to feel safe there and feel like you are able to go there, and that also your family lives there. You still care about people that are living in those systems. So I still care about changing those systems, which is something that I hope a lot of Americans abroad feel. But if not, we're here to encourage you to feel that pressure of still wanting to contribute via your vote and hopefully via other civic methods.
Yes, but be careful with Act Blue, because that's been a little bit of a...
What's Act Blue?
Act Blue is the sort of left-leaning political donation website. So that's how you donate to candidates usually.
Yes.
However, there's been a little bit of like controversy as to whether Americans abroad can actually donate abroad, or if you have to physically be in the U.S. And it's been quite a little thing. So if you have a check to send a physical check to that candidate.
Do I have physical checks? No.
Order the physical check.
Can I Venmo?
Yeah, Venmo somebody in the U.S. You're like, I'm gonna Venmo you. No, I shouldn't even
joke.
Try to find like the gray areas or the loopholes.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many ways to contribute to a candidate without having to financially contribute.
Yes.
And you can still phone bank from abroad.
Yep.
My husband is always running phone banks still for candidates that he works for.
Wait, can I explain what phone banking is?
Yeah, of course. I hadn't even thought about people who don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's a thing in the Netherlands.
I certainly haven't been phone banked on my Dutch number.
Yes. So phone banking is basically like, I used to work on a Senate campaign, and we had a list of people, kind of like what you were talking about, like likely voters, Democrats probably, and we were calling them person by person. Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm calling with the Charles Booker campaign. Are you going to be voting in this year's midterm elections? And you're kind of having conversations. So it's door knocking, but with the phone.
Yeah. And you can also text bank too.
Then I started text banking, which I loved way more. I mean, I have a good phone voice.
Responses are a little nastier on the text, so.
People's responses are nasty anyway.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was very interesting just sitting. Actually, during COVID, I did this a lot because you could not go door knock.
Yeah.
So during COVID, I was in my parents' basement, like glass of wine in hand, phone banking. I'm so sorry to the campaign. But it was
as long as you're getting the calls done.
And I did hundreds of calls per day. It was really just like, it was really an interesting experience.
Yeah. And they have so much tech too for campaigns. So it's like, you don't have to hand dial every single phone number.
Oh, no.
Just to be clear about that, you don't have to hand dial like each one. Yeah, a rotary phone. They're like, this is the campaign phone you have to use.
Yeah.
No, they have what's called a dialer, and it makes it super easy for you just to do one call after another. So that way you can do like those 100 calls
per
in a
evening.
day.
Yeah. But I have not been, maybe also because I can't vote. So maybe Dutch listeners, let us know. Is phone banking a thing here? I don't think so with GDPR regulations.
Yeah, it's probably harder to find phone numbers. What's so interesting though, and my husband and I were talking about this as like a difference is you can put things in people's mailboxes here. So like you'll very often just get like a flyer in the mail where they just like stick it in the mailbox without like putting anything like on, like they're not sending it through the post essentially. You cannot do that in the US. It's like actually very illegal to just like
drop things
in the mailbox in particular. You have to like send it through the post and everything. So we have gotten some like good little just like flyers popped in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, to our point, like GDPR makes everything so different here. But I feel like there's still so many different ways that parties could be outreaching to people.
So also probably good for people to know GDPR is data protection. So if you are going to a website, you have to accept that cookies are being used. Also for organizations, if they collect your phone number, they are not allowed to just give your phone number out to a campaign or to anyone. And so that's kind of the difference I see a lot of this boiling down to is the legal protection that you have over your email, phone, address.
And even some of those like consumer data pieces too that you don't really think about of like your shopping, and like you would be so shocked of like Kroger back in the US, like how much Kroger is collecting of your shopping data via your little like Kroger shopping card, and like or when you are browsing the web and they're looking at like, you know, what are the ads on Meta that you kind of stop on? What are the things that interest you? All of that data in the US is like relatively unprotected and relatively unregulated. There are some states I hear that are like getting a little bit better about like, you know, making some consumer protections, but largely here in the EU, they're a little bit better about protecting people's privacy. I won't say they're 100% good at it because there's still some definite like issues, but they're a little bit better about protecting privacy, which to kind of what we're talking about makes it a little bit harder to do like super specific targeting of like, who's going to be our, you know, right-wing voters versus our left-wing voters. If there is a such thing here, everybody is like so multi-party and specific.
I was going to say it's like some of these smaller, I consider it a smaller technicality, actually yields to the bigger party system and is probably why the system has evolved the way it has, because in the US we are so specific in targeting people into such boxes, whereas here there's less of that and there are so many parties. It's not as consistent. You can't predict what people will vote, and
or even if they will vote.
Or if they will, which we encourage you to vote.
When you know, you and I talked a little bit about it offline, if you will, but it's so interesting to me too that like you get your one day to vote here, and that's your one day. And I think when I try to explain to Europeans about early vote, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, we get sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes shorter, depending on the state you're in and depending on the race. But we get extra time to go and vote. They have polls that are open for like the, you know, the 2 weeks-ish before the actual election day. So it's like you're getting a lot more opportunity to vote. But of course there's like a lot of added complications in voting in the US, depending again on the state you're in, on how easy they make it or how hard they make it. And so I mean it's just such a different system that I do wonder if like, you know, we could benefit a little bit from each other, and the benefit, which I guess is like the sort of the thesis of like my husband and my consulting here is like, what best practices can we take from both cultures and really infuse those to make voting easy? And I mean, also, of course, there's like a partisan part of this, and make the candidates that we want to win, right? And I think some of that stuff that we have in the US that makes it like a tiny bit more accessible would be really cool and like beneficial here.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, so here you have your one voting day, and the first election I saw, I was so shocked by how many voting booths there were around the city, but like voting locations. I mean, everywhere. Like, just on every corner, there was a different voting spot, and there was no line. And
No.
I was like, I'm not used to that. Like, I grew up going with my parents to vote, and we would wait in a line, and we were in a very, like, privileged voting location, I'd say, but you would still wait for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And, like, it was here, you walked in, they get this very big piece of paper, which is probably my favorite part of the Dutch elections. But then you walk in and out within like 5 minutes, unless you're really in there contemplating. But
You're thinking.
It's really like, it shocked my like American brain that's so conditioned to thinking of like the people who unfortunately have to wait hours to vote. Or there was like a whole meme that went around about like, if you're in line, stay in line, because there were people waiting for hours and then the voting locations closed. But legally, if they were already in line, they were able to still vote. And then they were still waiting. No food, no water. Maybe there's volunteers going around passing out water bottles. But like,
in some states, they make that illegal too.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So in a lot of states, you can pass out snacks, drinks, whatever to people in line. Some states don't allow that. They like consider it to be electioneering, which it's like so obviously not. Unless your water bottle is like vote for Mitt Romney or whatever. But like,
are you voting Democrat? Here's water.
Right. You're right. But so some states have that. But this is where I get really geeked out about mail-in ballots. I do love a good mail-in ballot. And I think a lot of states, including Nevada, where I'm from, expanded that infrastructure during COVID because they didn't obviously want people to come and stand in a line and cough on each other. But I think that makes it like really easy and convenient too, to be able to just like fill out your ballot, sign it, drop it in a mailbox, or in a lot of states they have like an actual drop box where you can put it directly in. And I don't think that's bad. And I don't think that's like a thing that other countries shouldn't institute, especially if you're already doing a big giant paper ballot anyways. Send somebody that big paper ballot at their house.
They do. The ballots get mailed to your house. So then you already have the ballot actually.
Like
so you should be able to just drop it off. Yeah. No, it's true. But I mean,
Post NL can start a new contract and get.
You can invoice Taylor for your idea.
Thank you, everybody. I'm here to back the boys in blue, which they're not actually blue here; they're orange. But in the U.S., our mail service is our USPS is blue.
The boys in blue. Yeah. No, I mean, that's the unfortunate thing about the U.S. is that it's state by state that's determining. So where I'm from in Kentucky, like, is very different than Georgia, which is different than Nevada. And each state gets to decide all of these rules and laws, which is just a bit frustrating. Also, as a voter from abroad, because my voting abroad patterns have to fit into the state that I was last registered in. But your voting abroad patterns, if you were living in New York, would be falling under New York law. So also, from the perspective of people voting from abroad, you still have to be mindful about the state you came from, which is like a bit frustrating that it's not all at least somewhat regulated.
And when we're talking too about these different rules for voting and how every state is different, that's why a race that you probably don't care about or think about anytime, like the Secretary of State, is important because they're the ones making those rules. And so if you are a person who's like, oh, I split ticket, I vote for some Democrats and some Republicans because I want to be fair, which is an unusual amount of people, believe it or not. They're like, I just vote for the best guy for the job. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't always work the way you think it does. But when you have a really hardcore Republican Secretary of State, it can completely decimate your voting infrastructure. Because then we start with we got to make it more secure. And, you know, we have to take out this piece or that piece. And it really can completely ruin voting culture in a state. So it sounds so corny, but every race is important and every race contributes to daily life, and not just for people in the US, but for Americans abroad as well, because we still have to engage with American infrastructure, whether we like it or not. And it's hard to say how important each race is, but it's like when you start to look and go, oh wow, like, you know, this one particular thing has been really bothering me. And it's like, oh, well, that's this one really small race that, you know, nobody wants to vote for. But it's interesting because there are so many different rules. And I think Europeans don't necessarily get that because they're like, well, you know, why is it not regulated? Which is why I always kind of compare the US more to the EU broadly, because this is sort of a cooperation of states that, yes, they're all under like one centralized government, but each state has the responsibility to making their own laws. And I think it's easier to think of the US in that regard than it is to be like, oh no, like everybody should have the same rules. Like, yeah, of course, like the EU, they have their main structure that they need to follow, and there's certain laws that every, country within the EU has to follow. But ultimately, each country has their own laws and regulations and everything like that. And
Yeah.
that's really the way American states work too.
And methods of implementing those, because like voter security is probably not federally regulated, but then each state has different laws about voter IDs. Do you need to bring an ID with you? Do you need to register 2 months before the day of the election day, or can you register on the day of? Like, there's all these little kind of rules that actually make a big impact. Like, people in the United States, we have to register to vote.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting when I talked about like how in the Netherlands you get mailed a ballot. If you are a citizen of the Netherlands, or even you have the right to vote, you will get a ballot in the mail, which on its own is a great communications campaign because you're getting the ballot physically. Whereas in the US, it's the opposite. We have to actively go register ourselves to vote. You only do it once.
The only data thing in the US you have to opt into.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
You have to opt in and say, yes, I want to vote. Like, but that's your basic right as a citizen. It doesn't make sense, but again.
Well, I think that's the crux of it, right? Is like, I don't think all Americans believe that that's your basic right as a citizen. And that's where you get into some stuff. Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, when we think of something I think is interesting, and I think a lot of people don't think about, is like, vote restoration. So when felons are able to restore their right to vote, or people that are in jail, that's a very controversial thing, is letting people in jail vote. But it is most of the, not, well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people in jail have not been prosecuted of a crime yet. A lot of them are waiting because they don't have bail money, they're on trial, whatever. And so it's very controversial, but it's like those people also have a right to vote right now too.
Well, yeah, because now even if you've been prosecuted of a crime, does that mean you're no longer a citizen? Does that mean you shouldn't be allowed to vote? I actually used to work on this. So you can see where my inclination is, but
yeah, of course. I mean, and me too. But I think that's where people differentiate, and I think even when we start to get, this could be my too woke take, right? I know that's a fun thing to do. It's like your least woke and your most woke take, but children. And I'm not saying like there should be like 4-year-olds voting, right? But it's like when we're looking at like the kids of a really great organization, Sunrise Movement, who are doing climate work. Those are 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are not able to vote, but it's like they're very impacted by school funding, by climate change, by all of these issues that ultimately, like, the 85-year-olds in Congress are never going to see the fruits of their awful choices. But those young people will. So it's looking at like, how expansive is the right to vote? And that's, I think, the question, everybody's trying to answer and figure out. And I think you get some people on the very far right that are very restrictive with that, where you see a lot of people right now that are calling for single household voting, which makes me shudder, where that's where women want to give up their right to vote to just allow their husband to vote for the family. Oh, chill down my sleep paralysis demon. Which, my husband would make a great vote, but like that's
that's not the point.
I still would like one.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of that on the far right now, where it's really calling for the women's right to vote to be repealed. And then, on my too woke take, maybe on the further left, like maybe we should expand voting rights even more, because I look at also, this is definitely too woke, but it's like non-citizens that are living and paying taxes in the US, they also have a right to talk about the infrastructure and how they want to see voting handled. Now, to caveat, like if you're in the US and you're not a citizen, like don't go run out and vote. Like this girl on a podcast said it was cool. But I think you're looking at like all of us are impacted by the government system of wherever we live. Would I love to vote in the Netherlands? Yes, I would. Because like I still pay taxes here. I know there's a lot of, talk about, all of these expats, which I consider myself an immigrant because I'd like to stay here. But I want to be a part of the political system here. I feel like if I'm paying taxes here and I'm actively trying to be a part of the place that I live, like I should be able to have a voice in that. So Voting rights is complicated.
It is very complicated. I really, in the Netherlands, in municipal elections, you can vote after 5 years of living there, which I think is really nice.
I love that.
Step in the right direction.
I thought that was so cool and progressive, and I was like, oh my God.
I know. I was like,
what a new world.
Next municipal election, I'll be there. Like, when is the next?
You should definitely have some of the different parties on and see, because I want to hear from them. I know they're so reticent to do any English language stuff, but it's like, I don't think people realize in the Netherlands, but also abroad in the US, some of these seats are flipped by 6 votes, 5 votes. There are tiny little margins that make such a huge difference. And here in the Netherlands, like the quote unquote expat vote, the immigrant vote, like that can make the difference for some of these parties that are smaller. And it's like, outreach to us, like we want people to
we want to chat. Yeah, no,
it's not just gross Americans. I know everybody hates Americans right now. I don't blame them, but like there's other EU residents that are able to vote in these elections. And I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Tell me what the heck is in your manifesto so I don't have to read 18 pages of it.
Give me a communications.
That's what they need. Everybody needs a comms consultant.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think I wanted to end on not a more meta reflection, but also I know we're talking a lot about voting right now and like how important it is to vote, but also recognizing that the party that I at least will vote for is not perfect. The Democratic Party is really frustrating recently, and especially with wars that have been happening. I mean, I was just listening to a podcast by one of my favorites, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he was talking a lot about what happened with Kamala Harris's campaign and how she lost all of these votes because of the war that the administration was perpetrating, and how hard it is to look people in the eye and say like, yeah, I want you to vote for my party, but I can't promise that I'm going to stop this war. And like, that's the nuance of voting in elections, is that it's really hard to hold those two things at once and recognize that like voting is a tool. It's not a complete endorsement of every single thing that candidate does.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of the issue with the two-party system, right? Is we're seeing just how long really the Democratic Party has rested on their laurels of like, well, we're better than the other guy. And it's like, that's not an endorsement. Like that's the other guy's like actively like taking civil liberties away, like killing people in
war crimes.
Yeah. And you're like, but I'm not him. And it's like, yeah, that I would hope not. Like just as an ethical human being, like
bars in hell.
Yeah, like just kind of climb out, maybe just top level, But it's very difficult and it's frustrating, and that's why I think the energy surrounding some of these like, left populist candidates is exciting to me, because I think people are frustrated. They're frustrated with war, right? They're frustrated with Iran. They're frustrated. I think they're still frustrated with Ukraine and Russia and everything happening there. And I think we're, of course, very frustrated with Gaza and everything that's happening there. And now Lebanon and sort of that increasing colonization that's happening in that location. But I think people are realizing like, yeah, the never ending wars suck. I still can't pay my bills. Groceries are expensive. Not to mention they're poisonous now. Everything's like, not only can I not afford the groceries, but now I'm going to have, horrible diarrhea for 2 months. So it's like, really, what are we voting for? Yeah. And, what I hope to see in the next presidential is I don't want the next candidate to be like, oh, we got to Joe Biden return to respectability and, like I'm going to get the country back on track to normal. I don't want normal. I want to see some real change. I want to see whatever the Mamdani energy of like, I'm going to go out and fix that pothole because you tweeted me about it. I want to see that on the presidential level, and I want to see that in the Senate and the House. Yeah. And I think Americans are getting to the point where they're fed up. But I was just listening to ABC, the Australian company, if you will, had interviewed Hassan Piker, and they were talking about the Tea Party. And I don't know if you're a little bit younger than me, but I remember you studied the Tea Party a little bit.
Rand Paul is a Kentucky senator,
that
so
is true, yes.
Up close and personal with the Tea Party.
Yeah. But the Tea Party, it wasn't AstroTurf movement, right? It was it was big corporate money and big billionaire money coming in to kind of create this movement, right?
Yeah.
But it took hold, and it was only a few seats that they flipped at the time, right? It wasn't this huge, like, oh my God, we've won 150 seats out of the House. Like, no, it didn't start out that way. And I look at the way things have really shifted in the Republican Party because of that small movement. And it gives me a lot of hope for the Democratic Party with what's happening in these really truly people powered movements, right? This is people being like, no, this hasn't been enough for me, and we need the Zoran Mamdanis, we need the Daria Lisas, we need Abdul El Sayed to really change things.
Yeah.
And so I see that, and I'm like, it only takes a few seats to flip, and all I can hope is that the Democratic Party looks at that, and instead of like hanging on for dear life and trying to hold on to old ways, looks and goes, we can get young men back with this. We can get Black voters back with this. We can get Latino voters back with this. I don't ethically, do I care if like Ken Martin from the DNC like believes in Medicare for all? No, I don't care. But I want them to not stop that progress, right? I want them to be like, you know what, if this is the people's will, this is democratic, right? Like if people are showing us this is what they want, then let's do it. And not, there's always this caveat of like, well, Abdul only won by this many votes, or Francesca Hong, like she lost by this many, so it's not popular. And it's like, that's what you're getting when you have a $7 million spend against those candidates, right? Like that's huge money from people like Third Way and these like very middle of the road I hate to say the consultant class, because like as being part of the consultant class, like you know, but that's the consultant class, right? And that's, you know, big corporate money being like, well, no, actually, we're gonna spend $70 million against your candidate, and then be like, well, they barely won, so people must not really like it. And it's like, no, that was success with every hand tied behind your back. And like, you know, they were doing everything they could to make these people not succeed. These are popular policies. People want Medicare for all. People want a Green New Deal. When people are told like Green New Deal means no cars and you have to like, you know, put manure in your backyard,
surprise.
They're like, yeah, we actually don't like that. But when they're like, hey, would you like to maybe not work in a coal mine and you want to work a green energy job instead? They're like, oh yeah, I actually do. So I feel a lot of energy bubbling up, which is good. And all I can hope is that like we can really expand on that, and that the Democratic Party can kind of get with the times. And it's like, it is just like the like that old, you know, worn down car that like you love, and you're like, man, it's probably time for a new car, but like maybe we can get a few more miles out of this one. That's the DNC to me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you are giving me a little bit of a plug for the work I do, which is democratic innovation, and this idea that like elections and the systems that we've built around our elections are actually not very democratic. Talking about millions and millions of dollars being poured into things.
Yeah.
And the idea that like this might also be a point in time where we start working towards new institutions that are not so reliant on elections and more reliant on citizens and deliberating and coming together and thinking through policies as a group and using our collective intelligence rather than electing people every 4 years and being like, oh, did my civic duty. Done. And so I also, while we're talking about voting right now because the midterms are coming up, I also encourage people to not just vote and then wait for the next election. Find something that you can do, get involved, use your civic muscles, whether it's in the Netherlands or somewhere else abroad or in the US. Like, we can't just keep this cycle of like, oh, I voted, I've been a good citizen, I'm going to complain now for a few years. And then
I do love to complain though. That is the most Dutch thing about me these days. But I do think there's, I really like Democrats abroad. I don't know if you've engaged with them at all, but they also do some work to helping people figure out how to like work their Secretary of State and like figure out how to vote. But I think organizations like that are really interesting because it is like, okay, how are we flexing this civic engagement muscle year round, right? Non-election focused, and then also kind of coming together with this common good of like, hey, we're all Americans. We're all gone. Like, how do we kind of navigate this like very weird space? So that is my probably favorite thing about the American system, which this is also like rotten to the core, unfortunately, from like money and politics. But like, there are so many organizations, and if you have a like specific interest in whatever, there's an organization that promotes that and engages in that and does voting rights, and they do legislative work around that. There's still so many opportunities, even if you're abroad, to like lobby your senators and your House reps and whatever. Yeah. So there's always ways. And oh my gosh, I could go on like for 4 more podcasts about labor rights, because I do think like striking and being in a union and all of those things are something that I think Europeans don't realize is like so unique to here. But if you're a worker, be in a union.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like flex that muscle too. Engage in your local union politics, engage with other workers. And I think you really can see like a lot of movement for people that way too, when it's like a non-election thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be centered around elections.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I have a confession about Democrats abroad. I met someone who worked for them and I was so excited. And then I said, yeah, I'll contact you next year when it's midterm year, because then I'll volunteer. And then he looked at me and he said, Hannah, that is the exact problem. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to send you an email right now.
You're like, I'm seriously typing it. Swear.
This is really bad.
You're like, I don't want to think about politics right now. I'm so sorry.
I saw it as I was saying it. I was like, oh no, this is exactly the type of person that I'm trying to not be.
That's when you have to back up. You're like, I mean, I don't have capacity right now.
Yeah. I mean, at least I care about the midterms, but
yeah,
let's flip this. No, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Actually, so every week I try to ask, like, what's one thing you're recommending to the listeners? So do you have something to recommend?
Sure. So this actually was the podcast right after the one you were talking about. But Hassan Minhaj did a podcast with More Perfect Union. And I have to plug More Perfect Union, speaking of like labor rights, but also just like journalistic integrity. I love More Perfect Union. They do really interesting and I feel like innovative content around sort of the American political system, not just worker rights, of course, but like all of the things happening in the US, whether that's like data centers or the Flint water crisis or whatever. They're on the ground and they're reporting about it and making really cool content about it. So always More Perfect Union. And then always Dropsite News. Ryan Grimm is like my favorite news source. So if you're looking for political news, I would say Dropsite News is my favorite.
I don't know that one. I'll have to look it.
Ryan Grimm is the best. He has written a couple of books. One of them was about AOC and the Squad. And that was a really phenomenal one. But he's a great reporter and started his own reporting site. But they're on Substack and Twitter and everywhere. So
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think my recommendation is pretty simple. Vote from abroad.
Dang, I should have taken that one.
Sorry, low-hanging fruit, but after this, I'll do a segment on how to vote. I found a really nice resource, so I can walk you through a bit of that resource, and then you can find the link in the show notes so that you can submit your ballots, because I know it feels like the midterms are in November. That's so far away, but for us being abroad, it actually matters now. So get your ballot from abroad and vote. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Dose of Dutch podcast. And thank you, Taylor Patterson, for joining us with all of your expertise. As a reminder, I am here filming in The Hague's premier content studio, Studio Point of View, and our furniture is styled by Hoff Furniture. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.